Welcome, if you're just joining us, to End User Computing Innovation Day. I'm A.M. Grabilny, one of your hosts, Degrassi enthusiast, developer advocate, joined by my colleague and friend,
Jeff Marushak. I am a senior solutions architect on our Department of Defense Air Force team, and I know you're probably saying, oh, it's Jeff and AM again. They're going to be talking about Degrassi and the next generation and Star Trek.
And which one's better, which is obviously Degrassi. But no, we're not. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about end user computing with Brett. Brett, please introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here, and thank you all for joining me. Brett Taylor. I've been with Amazon for almost 15 years.
Wow.
Which, the mind reels. A few things have changed in that time. We'll talk about change, I guess. But, I joked with these guys, the white, it's no lie. I've been here a minute or two. But no, I've been almost, like I say, 15 years. I've been largely AWS in my career. I did spend 3 years on what became our Just Walk Out stores. But last, I guess 5-6 years now, I've been on the EUC team. And most recently, general manager for our WorkSpaces Web service.
Very nice, very nice. I want to remind everybody we are live. We've got chat open. If you've got questions, let us know. If you want to put in your opinion, what's better, Degrassi The Next Generation or Star Trek The Next Generation? Put that in chat. And I know you're going to pick Degrassi just for me. All right, so we're going to kick things off here, right?
Well, Brett, so you'd said you've been with AWS for around 14 years. You've probably been in IT longer than that.
Sure.
So you've seen how the workplace has changed.
Yeah.
And you've gone from everyone having their own personal laptop to maybe a more distributed version. Can you walk us through what you've seen over the years?
Maybe even prior to laptops.
I was going to say, I've been around long enough that there were like fixed workstations when I first started in my career. So, things have changed quite a bit since then. And honestly, I think with the last 3 years, we've all gone through a pretty amazing social experiment that's demonstrated we all kind of expect to be able to be productive wherever we are, right? Whether it's in our office, at a customer site, at vacationing. Maybe you get the call and you have to jump on at the airport. There you go, exactly. So, the notion of like the workplace being a place that you step up to a desk and sit there for 8-9 hours a day, it's not safe.
It's funny, you brought up working at the airport. If I would have said at some point in my life, like, oh, someday I'll work, there's going to be a time where I had to, put in an hour at the airport. I would never have believed you, but sure enough, I have, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I love, Brett, you've got the illustration here. I believe this is specifically Fox Mulder's desktop from the basement.
Or the Smoking Man, one of those two.
Yeah. It looks like something that was a prop in the X-Files, at least.
Yeah.
I love that the top bay drive is slightly off-colored, so something was there.
They've been working. Yeah, exactly. It's a working machine.
So as the workplace has changed
Yeah.
dramatically, what are we seeing? What challenges are we facing now as IT practitioners?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's two big things I'm here to talk about today. First is that more and more work is done in the browser. Like that's just we're seeing a real trend towards SaaS applications, software as a service applications, obviously web delivered applications, and we'll talk about some more stats maybe a little bit later.
Okay.
But there's this overriding trend of work going to the browser, and there's a lot of good reasons for that we can discuss. But the other sort of corresponding factor is that the client-side browser is like the biggest attack surface out there for bad actors. So you're doing more of your work.
Bit of a dangerous place,
doing more of your work in the browser, and the browser is always everybody's favorite target to go after. So what do we do? Like, how do we make sure folks are agile, flexible, productive at all times from anywhere via like web-based application delivery, but they're also safe?
I just right-click, view source, and try to get something.
Exactly. Yeah. Download your machine. Yeah. So that's what WorkSpaces Web is squarely focused on.
All right, we're going to be talking from a security perspective, it sounds like, which
security and productivity,
one of my favorite areas. Wait, hold on. I know this is getting a little bit ahead, but you just said security and productivity in the same breath, and you're going to tell us maybe
that's the goal. Maybe we'll just leave that out there for now.
Those two things aren't in constant battle?
They seem to be sometimes. Yeah. We want to fix that.
Okay. All right. I guess we'll learn more about that.
Yeah, so earlier on we talked about SaaSifying applications. We talked through the benefits of what you and your customers can gain through changing to a SaaS model. But it looks like it's continuing to grow with this very detailed graph you have. Up
Yeah,
there.
exactly. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves.
That's right. That's right. Up and to the right. It's like stocks.
up and to the right.
It's like stocks. Like you just up and to the right. Always.
Highly specific slide here, but the point is, no, it's true, right? SaaS expansion in enterprise is totally real. You can quote your favorite analyst or whatever, but some stats I've seen, the segment itself is supposed to be growing at a 17% compound annual growth rate, so just huge acceleration. Some folks have forecast that by the end of the decade, like 80% of applications will be SaaS. So it's a huge percentage. So people are, again, like I kind of kicked it off with, more work is happening in the browser. That's like where work gets done more and more often.
Well, I loved when I first started to realize that. I was always like, oh, I need a nice laptop because I'm an IT person. I'm going to use it. But then when I stopped and really thought about it, no, I just do a lot of web stuff.
Yeah.
And I have a separate gaming computer, which I'm not going to use on my laptop. So maybe I don't need this awesome computer. So it is eye-opening to see the change.
Absolutely.
Now, when we have moved to this browser, right, which often has already happened,
Yeah.
what are those online threats?
Yeah, exactly.
What continues to persist? It's not so much the virus downloaded from an email attachment so much anymore. It's now there's other attack vectors.
I will say that, unfortunately, my personal devices have been infected more often than a device from an enterprise from where I worked.
Oh.
Maybe probably.
You're willing to admit this on a public?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So if I'm doing more work on my personal device, it seems like, just like you said, the attack vector is bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very vulnerable of you to share that.
Yeah.
You get that? You get vulnerable?
Yes.
Vulnerability. You
I'm
get
inviting all of you
security.
in. Join
I
me.
appreciate it.
Join me on
Let's
my-
all be honest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are we facing
Yeah,
in terms
exactly.
of attack vectors in a browser?
Sure. Just throw a few more stats out there, I suppose, just for the group. But basically, again, depending on who you listen to, the security threats, the online threats, are doubling every year. Just year over year, this is like a bigger and bigger problem space for all of us to deal with.
You probably could have used that last graph as well.
Yeah, it's sort
Up
of
and to
doing
the
that.
right.
Exactly.
Just like investing in stocks.
Exactly.
Same thing.
And-
There's
and
a
but-
correlation here. Just
But like I said, the number one surface that they're going after is that client-side browser. They know that you're out there. That generally people are trusting. They're out. They're going to click on a link if it looks valid, and they might find themselves in a bad spot. So there's a big surface area to go after. Everyone's online. It's probably the most widely used applications. As many great apps as there are out there, the browser is kind of the one that I guess binds them. So
right. And so I've worked with security groups. I've been in security groups. I think the answer is lock down everything. Allow everyone to do nothing. Right, Brett?
yeah, that's sort of frequently what you see, right? You
Or
want
maybe
to,
not. Productivity and security can coexist.
Right. I mean, there's a ton of productivity, like we talked about. The reason people are adopting SaaS is for the productivity benefits, the agility benefits, the ability to say, I want the very best application for this specific use case. I don't want to be locked into some bundle where, I take what I get. Like, no, I want to go pick and choose all the best things out there. But yeah, then oftentimes what we've seen in the past is, but you can only access from this network, or you can only access from this device. Oh, you've got to have this on your device so that it's trustable and so forth. And sometimes that leads to people going, I'll just do it later, or it leads to people opting out entirely, saying, no, I'm not going to work on a personal device, for example. So our goal with WorkSpaces Web is really, productivity or security. Yeah, let's have them both. Why can't we have both of those things?
Yeah, we've got Meow Wharf on Twitch chat saying, I've worked in those environments every day where everything is locked down. It's hard to get anything done.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Also, Meow Wharf sided with you, which is
Thank you.
fun play on maybe Meow Wolf, which is a cool art collective, and Worf from Star Trek.
I love
right?
it,
That's
yeah.
a Star Trek person?
Yes.
Okay. I could tell you about Degrassi people, but not the Star Trek people. now, I just want everybody in watching at home just to know this wonderful graphic that Brett has brought us is not physically present here.
Sadly.
Brett did not bring cake with him, and that's a big strike against
It's a
you,
lesson
Brett.
learned,
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
I'll
It's okay.
I'll get better. I
We'll
promise.
forgive you this time.
Yeah, all right.
But
But the-
yes, I do love this illustration. Productivity and security.
The
living
point
hand
is
in hand.
that you can have your cake and eat it too.
Exactly.
Dogs and cats living together.
Wait a second. Hold on. So let's talk about WorkSpaces Web. We've been kind of teased it a little bit earlier this morning as one of the options for AWS End User Computing services. Again, using the right tool for the right job. We've gone through a bunch of different options. earlier we talked about SaaSifying applications using AppStream. But walk us through how SaaS plays a role and what WorkSpaces Web will help people do.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, the whole point with WorkSpaces Web, and I mentioned this earlier, right? That client-side browser is the attack vector. That's what people are going. That's the surface area they want to go get because that's where you're doing things. That's where you're manipulating data. That's where you're going to go back and maybe connect to your corporate network later with that same device, right? So it's a long-lived application that's constantly being utilized by folks when they're trying to be productive, trying to get work done, which makes it a great target, right?
Yeah.
It's connected to the global internet all the time, and becomes a very easy place to infect, malware, etc. Right? All the various maladies out there. Our answer is don't do that on your local device. Run your browser in AWS. So what we provide is it's a browser in the cloud, effectively running on hardened, security-enhanced Linux instances, and critically, it's not long-lived. It's not persistent, right? So when I need to go get something done online, I jump in my client browser, yes, but then I'm using it to manipulate a browser running in AWS. I'm not pulling data. I'm not pulling web assets down to my endpoint device. I'm running a browser in AWS. So what happens is now my device, the internet, and my corporate networks, should I need to connect to it at some point, those are all isolated from each other. There's no bleed over, right? Where I've done something now, I've stumbled into the wrong site, and now there's malware on my machine. And oh, by the way, I'm also connected to my corporate network, and it's spreading like wildfire. It's all very much isolated from one another for everyone's protection.
Now, a lot of people, obviously are utilizing a whole gamut of different security tools, both at the network, endpoint, machine level, all types of different security tools exist for all types of different workflows. Where does WorkSpaces Web fit into that security tool chain?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's been interesting for me you talk with obviously hundreds of customers all the time, or as many customers as we can all the time, into the hundreds and hundreds. What I find is it's very much your mileage may vary. There's customers who are, the old analogy, locking your car in the garage, the locked garage. Like there are people that want every solution, every tool they can throw at security. They want to just be as robust and proactive and careful as they possibly can.
The built-in suspenders approach.
Exactly.
Is what I've always heard.
Exactly right. There's other folks who are seeing this as a great substitute for other things they've done in the past. So you can think about device management, for example. I have a great customer who needs to have SOC compliance across his customer base, his end user base, effectively. This meant they work with a lot of third parties. They work with both vendors and partners and so forth. So they would have to physically get laptops out to these endpoint end users in third-party companies that weren't even their employees to get the compliance level they need because they're working with sensitive data. They learned about WorkSpaces Web and they're like, oh, we're done with that. It doesn't matter, right? The device is almost irrelevant at that point because they're running their browser in the cloud. The interaction with customer content is happening in a secure place in AWS.
And when it comes to personal data, whether that's financial data, credit card numbers, social security numbers, and then if we talk about medical usage, we were just mentioning HIPAA compliance and patient act information. Keeping that all sequestered is a big deal.
Exactly. Yeah, you want control of that data. You want to know exactly where it lives, and like I mentioned before, you want to know that it gets expunged when you're done being productive with that data. You don't want it living.
Yeah. So can we see what this looks like?
Absolutely.
Do you have maybe?
Yeah,
well, it looks like a web browser.
Yeah, how about that, huh? Imagine. Hopefully this isn't too dissimilar from what you're used to. I talk about this all the time, but one of our key tenets for us when we were building the service is low friction. We didn't want to add, we talked about productivity and security, right? So the way you get that is by making this as low friction, as zero friction as you possibly can. So from an end user perspective, I go to a browser, I go to what we call a portal, it's just a term, but effectively what that is a URL that gets you to your cloud browser, your browser running in AWS. And from there, it's browsing, right? It's back navigation, it's forward navigation, it's going to the bookmarks you've set as a company for your users. It's very simple, it's very common and very much in line with your typical workflows.
Yeah, I see the browser in browser, which, as we all know, the internet is just browsers all the way down. Of course, like the universe, which is turtles all the way down.
Of course, yeah.
Which we all know as well. The Earth sits on a turtle.
Exactly.
Underneath that turtle is another turtle.
Exactly.
All the way down. Which, you'll notice the two address bars here, right? That first address bar is what you're talking about, where I, the end user, go and log into this to get access to the second browser within my browser.
That's exactly right.
And then that address bar is what's taking me to my my applications,
Yeah,
whatever I'm using.
my web applications for work. Yeah.
I don't know necessarily, like, I don't recognize this SaaS app. I know we mentioned SaaS apps,
Yeah.
you know, and there's a plethora of, I used to work for a SaaS app company called Box, for example,
Sure.
does storage. I think something interesting to call out, Brett, I can bring my own web-based applications to this too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Anything that my users could access.
You can be as restrictive or as permissive as you want to be with how you set up your end users so they can be productive. It can be as simple as there's one web application that we use to be productive, and that's what they get to with this experience. Or it can be general browsing. We see people wanting to use it for general browsing because, again, like we talked about, the web's a dangerous place. So like let's keep them sandboxed here, and let's keep it on this non-persistent instance that's going to go away and not infect anything else when they're done.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean. The web is a dangerous place. only positive, nice things happen.
It's a fantastic tool. I mean, I am super biased. I love the web. It was born in my lifetime, so I've watched this like change everything, really.
Yeah.
But you've got to be eyes wide open about the risks.
Yes, yeah, it is. There's a lot of interesting things that happen on the internet.
Earlier, when we were talking about AppStream, we talked about that encrypted flow of the pixels.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how this data is being transferred? So we see,
Absolutely.
just like AM mentioned, there's like the nested browser. So
Yep.
sales.boards.com on your slide.
Yep.
Is
That
that
traffic's never come into my device.
is that
Right.
Are we just
Exactly
getting
right.
pixels?
You're
or
getting a pixel stream. Yeah, we're leveraging all of our technology and all the work we've done in terms of pixel streaming and our protocols to deliver a really high performance, but without actual data. And that's what I always love to show this view. Anybody that's built a website or managed a website is probably pretty familiar with DevTools and any kind of mainstream browser.
yeah,
you get
event
this
source.
Exactly,
Yes, yeah.
right? You get this little slide out, shows you all this, tons and tons of content that's on the page, resources that you fetch from multiple domains all over the place. Well, you look at ours, that doesn't exist, right? Because the data's not there. The data is in the AWS cloud, and what you're getting is a representation of that data on your local machine. So you're just seeing a few service calls here. That's all that actually exists on the endpoint.
Yeah, the network tab on DevTools would be pretty interesting to see here too, because you wouldn't see any domain traffic coming from sales.boards.com. I'm sure all the traffic's just coming from Amazon.workspaces.
Exactly right.
So that's, again, the proof is in the pudding, I guess. Is that
Exactly.
so? The phrase, what? I don't understand that phrase, but
Proof is in the DevTools. How about that?
okay,
Got
there
it
you
in the
go.
DevTools,
Proof
yeah.
is in the. We had churros for lunch.
Yeah. Proof is in the churros.
I always get those confused because there's the cat treat called churu, and I want to say churu
the meat sticks.
instead of instead of churro. But we had churros for lunch, so the proof is in the churros.
There you go.
Anyway, I digress.
So, quick question about networking. Do you get to choose where these workspaces for web live? Like, can you put them in your own VPC, or you have full control? Can you walk through that real quick?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So you can decide, and we have customers that aren't even necessarily using a VPC. They just want this for secure browsing. Or if you need access to internal domains, internal websites, web apps, you specify the VPC, you specify the subnets, and away you go.
What's the default?
The default?
Is to be like some sort of non-VPC, like sort of like how Lambda runs if you don't specify a VPC.
Our typical experience is within the VPC. Most folks that we've talked to, they like that notion of securing external browsing, but they definitely need the access to their internal web apps and so forth.
Because I think that's valuable. If you're going, you want to check out a website, you're not sure about it. It's valuable to have that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, I want to give a quick shout out. My colleague Rich Burkett will be going into way more detail actually on some of the nuts and bolts, I guess, of how it all works. So you'll see more on Rich's session. So please, I hope folks will check that out.
Yeah, Rich is going to talk to us again. Spoilers, cover your ears if you don't want them. He's going to cover some of the SAML integration stuff too. He's going to cover that nav bar that what do y'all call that? The
toolbar.
The toolbar.
Yeah, which I probably should have shouted out. The only thing that really, in my mind, obviously you mentioned the browser and browser. There's a small toolbar. The nice thing about it, you can collapse it. You can move it out of the way. It's just for invoking things like a second monitor, for example, or turning on your camera, turning off your camera, that sort of thing.
Right. Interacting with the local device, and proxying that in.
Yeah.
I imagine. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I think some of the use cases here that people may not be thinking about, right? Something that sprang to my mind immediately was again, I come from a dev world, right? So I'm hyper focused on developer workflows and things like that. And a lot of my development has moved into a browser, right? So with the launch of services like Code Catalyst, one of my favorites, just recently came out, I could do a bunch of stuff in Code Catalyst right in browser with Cloud9, right? Which we've been able to use Cloud9 for a long time now, but Code Catalyst kind of ties all this together very nicely.
Right.
So, that to me, right? Like if I want to access my whole DevOps environment, my IDE through Cloud9, all browser-based, why not use WorkSpaces Web to do it? Because code, it's very simple.
Yeah, talk about your proprietary data, right? Your code is like, that's what your business is running on. So we find that to actually be a perfect use case. You could think, we talked before about PII, right? Any kind of data that's surfaced in your applications that's customer sensitive. Let's keep that in the cloud. Let's keep that kind of under lock and key. Sales information even. You can imagine CRM data. That's your customer base. That's your lifeblood. Like you want to control where that goes, and you probably want to keep it off endpoint devices.
Yeah, and some of the examples I can think of like not developer-wise, but maybe like a kiosk where someone comes up and it's maybe a full screen, but it really is a web application. They don't realize it, but it's like pushing buttons. Or maybe like machine, like equipment operations, like turning on a machine, turning on this cycle or whatnot. It's really just a web application.
Yeah.
You don't want them browsing anywhere else. You need them to get to this. Do you have any other good examples of what customers are using WorkSpaces Web for?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot. People, I get a hard time from this sometimes because folks ask me, well, what does a customer look like?
Yeah.
And I go, well, go look in the mirror, because it's everybody. It really is. You want to kind of go, oh, tell me your perfect vertical. Like, no, it's kind of all verticals.
Yeah.
That's what's been really interesting for us. So we see healthcare, we see finance, we see technology, public sector, obviously. It kind of runs the gamut.
And you probably see a lot of private customers just wanting a secure web browser.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you say, we're running a little bit low on time.
Sure.
What's next? So WorkSpaces Web is pretty cool. What's on the roadmap? What's in store for us?
Well, a couple things I want to get across to folks. First of all, Amazon loves the day one. It very much so. It's day one for our team. We've released a service. We're getting tons of great customer traction with it, tons of great customer feedback on it. But there's a lot to do. We've got a very full roadmap. There's a lot coming down the pike for our customers. But what I want to point out is the absolute lifeblood. It's one thing I've always loved about, I mentioned 15 years at Amazon. The thing I love about it is we talk to customers all the time, and customer feedback is absolutely essential to our roadmaps. And so while I could kind of talk all day about the roadmap we've got, and it goes, to new regions, it goes to new experiences with our authentication to make that even smoother and easier for end users, easier to set up for administrators. There's some great stuff coming there. Some new offers coming to make it even easier to get started with a service from a cost perspective. So we're excited to get those out to people. But the roadmap's flexible. So please, if you're interested, if there's some things that we didn't talk about today, or some things that you just have questions after taking a look at the detail page, we call it a product detail page. It's just where you learn more about the service. Reach out to us. There's all kinds of channels. There's feedback channels. There's our forums, of course. You maybe have an account manager that you work with on a regular basis. Reach out, ask them, and let's get in touch, and we'll talk about it. We literally talk to hundreds of customers every single year. It's one of the things I love to do, and we want to get feedback. So we're very much all ears.
Very nice. Brent, I'll ask, learning more, I think maybe one area that you could help the audience with is, where do I get started? Do I just move all of my browser traffic, everything that my end users are doing all at once over to WorkSpaces Web, or do I do it more targeted at specific web apps?
Yeah.
What do I prioritize?
That's a great one. And it's been another kind of your mileage may vary, I suppose. We've talked with, like digital natives have been very quick to adopt the service, right? They live in the browser. They're web-based with their applications. And we've seen those folks just deploy this widely. It's like, this is the way we get our work done. We've seen some of your larger enterprises where they go, okay, well, we have this partner over here, or we have this group of customer support folks or customer management type folks that, all their stuff is in the browser. Yeah. We're maybe paying for more than we need. Maybe we're running a VPN for those folks to get access, and it's more permissive than it ought to be. They find this to be a really easy solution to adopt. We've literally had customers get started with their proof of concepts in 20 minutes.
Wow. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today, Brett. We unfortunately gotta run.
Hey, I get it. Busy day.
Yeah, we got more content coming to you here at End User Computing Innovation Day. Stay tuned.